Hello, and thank you for joining us today. So this is episode 12 of the Technology Role Models Q&A sessions. Today I'm joined by Marie Hill, who is the Chief Transformation and Digital Officer for DB Cargo. So hi Marie, thanks for joining us.
Hey Gavin, you're welcome. It's a pleasure.
So that's it's quite a unique job title. So I guess for the benefit of our audience, could you please just give us a general overview of what that is and what you do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure the job title exists anywhere else, if I'm honest, and there is a story behind how it is what it is. But basically, I've been doing that role since January this year, and transformation and digital, it's kind of exactly what it says on the tin. It's all about looking at where our business is today, where we want to be in the future, how we change, how we move forward, usually with technology, but it can cover anything to do with people or process. So yeah, it's quite a broad reaching role, so it can cover anything. But yeah, all to do with transformation, change management, and digital and technology. So really exciting. It's the first time that we've done anything like that in group, because I belong to a group of organisations under the DB Deutsche Bahn banner. So yeah, I kind of feel like a lot of responsibility to make it successful so that other people can do that in other entities. But yeah, exciting times.
Yeah, and in terms of the types of teams and number of people you're responsible for, what does that look like?
So there's 3 direct teams. So there's IT, which is the laptops, phones, hardware, applications, networks, all the kind of predominant things, services you'd expect in an IT function. There's also digital, which is our development wing, but it's also got projects inside of it. So any major projects that we run, it's looking at the new technology that's coming out, and technology that we don't use today and how we can exploit that in our business. And then I have a third department that sits under me, which is around communications, strategy and policy. So that's kind of how we communicate to our employees and our external stakeholders, what we communicate. It's all around the policy for rail and freight and how we lobby government for things like decarbonisation, growth targets to move product onto rail. So quite a diverse portfolio of things, but yeah, it's good. It's building my experience.
One of the things that will be interesting to quite a few of our, especially our more experienced members, is the fact that your role is a board level role, which is a challenge for quite a number of CIOs to actually make that happen. We can probably get into the nuts and bolts of that later on when we talk about how you got to where you are now. But I think that's an interesting thing for people to know your journey.
Yeah, I think it's been a trend that's reversed a little bit, hasn't it? Because I think previously roles like head of IT, CIO would have been board member roles, and then there was a period of time where I think they dropped off the board. And I think the trend is now that they're kind of appearing again. And I also think it's part of it is to do with the industry that you're in and how much transformation and change that industry needs to go through. A lot of businesses, they transform with technology nowadays. It's the quickest, easiest way to change a business. So yeah, so I think it's great that we have that level of commitment at board to start to look at transformation and technology in our business. It really helps me do my job easier.
Yeah, it's something I strongly believe that more people in your position should have that board level influence, because, like you say, technology drives most business decisions and helps you engage the customer much better in this day and age. So normally I'd go back to the start now and start asking you about, what did you do at uni? Did you want to get into tech always? And what made you want to have a tech role? But in terms of talking about transitioning into tech, your version of the story is quite extreme. So what I'll probably rather do is just let you take us on a whistle-stop tour of your career to date, from education through to where you are now. Then I'll ask a few questions around that, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfectly fine. So I come from a family where nobody has gone to university. So I was the first person, well, I think ever in my family that's gone to university. So I was born in a Yorkshire mining village. So most of the people there didn't go. They kind of stayed where they lived. They grew up there. They worked there. They didn't move away from there. And I grew up in a single parent family with a mum that probably is I can only describe her, but I mean, I hope she never watches this, but she's like a dragon, and she's really independent and I think quite competitive by nature. You don't see it manifest itself very easily, but I think that's where I get it from. So I kind of always knew I loved studying, I loved learning different things. So I knew I wanted to go to uni. Luckily, at the time when I went to uni, there were grants and things available, because otherwise I'd never have been able to afford that. And I ended up, I wanted to study law originally. That would have been my prime choice. As it turns out now, I think I would have made an absolutely appalling lawyer. So it would have been a horrific career choice. But I didn't get the grades to do that. So I think fate intervened and sent me to Leeds, what was Polytechnic at the time, to study business information management and German. And I can't remember when we've spoken before, but I have my grandma's German, and so I have a really diverse history in my family. She was born in Germany, and so I have a bit of an affinity to Germany. So I kind of chose that course because I loved Germany, I loved speaking German, and it was where I could go to actually get away to go to uni. So I spent 4 years at uni doing the business information management, a year and a half of which was spent in Germany. Absolutely loved being in Germany. And when I finished uni and I went to live in London for a couple of months with a friend, just kind of bumming around really, not really doing very much. And my mum, once again, I'm hoping she doesn't see this, threatened me at the time and said, you need to start to apply for a job. And I thought, okay, I don't really want to work, so I'll apply for like the most bizarre job I can find, thinking I'll never get it. So I applied to work for Goldman Sachs in Frankfurt, the merchant bank, and actually went out to Germany for the interviews. It's quite a rigorous process, and to this day I still don't know how I got the job, but yeah, they must have clearly seen my natural talent for detail. I mean, I'm the most undetailed person you'll ever meet, which was kind of the prerequisite of the business analyst type role that I went into. But yeah, I got the job working in Germany, so I spent a couple of years out there. I mean, merchant banks is kind of a different world to what I was used to, and so it was wonderful. It was like one long holiday really for 2 years. Most of the people that I lived with, the circle of friends that I had out there, were either British or Irish, so it was kind of a really nice little community out there. And after about 2 years I came home and took a job with in Doncaster, where I live, with a local railway company that was consolidating all of its customer service centres into sort of one. And I kind of just thought, I'll take the job for temporarily till I find something different. And 20 plus years later, I'm kind of still here. So I kind of joined the railway. And I think once you're in, you never get out. It's a bit like the mafia or something. I don't think there's any other way out other than death, if I'm honest. But I mean, I've been really lucky. I've had a wonderful career here and really diverse. I've worked, I think I started planning trains, like timing trains, what time they were going to cross the network. And my customer was the Ministry of Defence, and I used to plan the tanks, the ones with the big turret things on the side, because they have to travel by themselves and blah, blah, blah. So it's quite again, a very detailed job. I don't quite know how I ended up in that part when everybody else that joined at the time I went to go and work in customer service and speak to customers. I ended up in a planning department that I don't think had seen a lady working in it for about 20 years. So, but it was brilliant and a really great grounding in rail freight, and yeah, so it's fab. And then kind of since then I've been really lucky. I've worked in most of the functions in our business, so finance, sales, not procurement, IT, production. So and then yeah, about 4 or 5 years ago I was working in major projects, because I think that's my tenuous link to IT, is that my discipline is I'm a trained project manager. So I suppose out of all the IT disciplines, there at least is some kind of tenuous link to IT. And I got the job as head of IT, which is sort of my path into technology, I guess, through that. But I'd be the first to hold my hands up and say, I'm not the most technologically literate of people that you could ever meet. And if you could have been in my office, literally about 40 minutes ago with a colleague, you would have seen me trying to be explained what a HDMI cable was and where I was supposed to plug it to connect it to a projector. And the younger generation of my team were like, "Oh, how do you do your job?" So yeah, I'm not the most technologically literate of people, which is unusual, I suppose, for head of IT.
Yeah, it is quite unusual. I think to me that poses two questions. So I know when we spoke in the past, I've got an understanding of how you came to get that head of IT role, and it was absolutely through somebody in the business recognising the strengths you had and saying, you know, you should go for this. So that to me speaks of you having, you know, a really strong network and really strong internal sponsors. A lot of people know the value of sponsors and that they are needed, and that men tend to naturally find them more than women do. With hindsight, do you think that's something that you actually engineered yourself, or was it a natural product of you doing a good job?
I think it's a bit of both, Kevin, to be honest. When I first came into, wasn't DB at the time, it was a company called EWS. It was very male dominated, so there were very few women that worked in there. I think there was an influx when I joined because they consolidated their customer service centres, so quite a few women came in at the same time, but there weren't very many females in management. And I think I am very driven and I am very passionate and I'm very inquisitive to want to do more and want to know more. And I think that's probably the natural element that helped me. I don't have a problem blowing my own trumpet and sort of saying, "Oh yeah, let me do it. I'm really good at this. Let me have a go." And then thinking afterwards, "I've no idea how I'm going to deliver this." But you know, it's kind of, I think stepping out of your comfort zone doesn't really bother me, and I love. I was going to say public speaking. I'm not sure it's public speaking, but I like talking. I think we talked about it, didn't we, about social styles and things. I'm yellow, jazz hands. I like standing in front of people and chatting, and I think that really helped kind of push my career forward. I think the sponsorship is something that when you work in the same organisation for a period of time, having good sponsors and building good relationships for me is something that unlocks doors, particularly in a business where there's lots of opportunity and lots of projects. And I think if I could pick one thing that's probably aided my career more than anything, it's working on projects. So getting diverse knowledge of the business, understanding how projects work and how you can change, and having the exposure in different areas and people saying, "Oh yes, she did this, that was really good, we should ask her to come and work on this." So yeah, I think the sponsorship certainly helps, and I think it puts your name in the frame when people are looking at, well, who have we got that could work on this? But I think you should also be not afraid to stand up and say, what else can I do? What else can I be involved in? And if there's an option to nominate yourself for things, 100% go for it. I think there's very few times I've done that and not regretted it. So, sorry. So, yeah.
I think that resonates with a couple of the other people we've had on earlier. One who absolutely, his main point was take opportunities that come your way. You know, don't be afraid to take something on, even if you don't think you're 100% fit for it. If someone's offered you it, there's probably some reason behind that. You know, that they see the competence. And then the second one is what you said about blowing your own trumpet, and to put it in a nicer way. You know, don't be afraid to talk about all the good things that you're doing. I think quite often people just put their head down, do a great job, and they get overlooked for things just because people go, yeah, they're good at that, let's leave them to it. Whereas one of the ladies I spoke to talked about a 90-10 rule, where she said every project she takes on, when she's planning it, she plans 90% of the time to spend doing the stuff and 10% of the time to spend talking to the business about what she's doing. And not just from a self-promotion perspective either, you know, in terms of getting users on board and getting stakeholders on board. I think it's really important that you're constantly communicating, you know, what value you're adding.
It's funny because when I took over head of IT, one of the things that we weren't particularly good at was self-promotion as a function. And perception is reality. So if people perceive that you're doing a bad job, and IT is one of those things, you're kind of as good as the last failure you had, because we're inherently by human nature, we dwell on the negative, not the positive. So part of my job as head of IT, I felt, was to manage perception, so evidence, fact, what can we shout about, what can we sing about, you know, where can we sort of promote great behaviour. Our head of legal calls me Perspex Hunter, because I'm constantly looking for things where I can nominate the team for Project of the Year, or an award for this, or an award for that, because I think it helps morale, it recognises the great things that we do that often kind of get lost if, you know, technologies, it's so inherent in business nowadays that, you know, it tends to be that a failure actually can cause quite a lot of disruption. So for me, it's about managing that balance between, you know, being seen for the negative, but actually making sure that they're positive. And I think that the same should be said about a personal level. You should be able to self-promote and look at the great things you've done. And I think it's human nature to forget those things, especially when you're bogged down in the day-to-day.
Absolutely. And then the other thing about your getting the head of IT role in the first place that strikes me is, as a recruiter, we see this day in, day out. You know, companies, whilst wanting the person that has all those skills that you spoke about and the things that got you the job, they quite often can't separate themselves from having somebody that is technically competent in all the areas that they're managing. And I think one of the reasons that they ask for that skill is when it comes to adopting a team and getting their buy-in, you know, and then recognizing you as the right person to be leading the team. So as somebody who badges themselves as, you know, technologically illiterate, how did you go about actually winning over the technical teams who see you as the person that should lead them on?
Yeah, I actually think you've got to start with honesty and actually say, I don't understand, I don't know, can you talk me through that? I think it takes time. I think you have to hope that whoever put you in that position chose you because you had a good vision for where you wanted to take that function, and that vision fit for where the company needed to go. So assuming that's correct, I kind of think for me, one of the things that helped me was I had a very clear vision that I wanted to change us to a much more service orientated function that was about value add, value return. I'm very commercially aware. That's, you know, probably the largest part of my background role that I've had. So I joined the team at a time when I think there was a lot of opportunity to make change. I think the team were very open to considering different ways of doing things. And I actually think people like to pass on knowledge. We often think it's a bad thing to ask for support or help or information. And actually, I don't think it is. I think that's how people grow. I was really lucky. I had really, really great people working for me who were phenomenal at what they did in each of their disciplines, all of them happy to share that knowledge with me. So I think it was an easy task to fit in. But I think a lot of it's about honesty and saying, I don't understand, go over it again, talk me through it again. You have to go, and the number of times, honestly, Kevin, when we've had to go through the most technical of things because we've had a failure of something, and I've kind of sat there thinking, I have no idea what the people in this room are talking about, and I could sit there and pretend that I did, but it wouldn't have got us to the solution that it got us to. And I think sometimes my outside techie looking in thinks that when you leave a group of techies together, you get a certain type of solution. But when you have non-technical people in the room asking, but why do we do that? Why do we need to do that? Can we not do it a different way? And there's a few times over the last few years when I was head of IT where I can remember sitting in a room with one of the most technical people in my team, really gifted at what he does. We'd be having a conversation about a problem, and it's so technical I can't really contribute. But then I'd say, well, how has that happened? But how did you know that that was there? Is there a way that we can see it a different way? And he'd go, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. And you know, when you think, oh my days, personal career win, that I've actually helped solve the problem. So yeah, I think it was that. I also think it's a bit about team engagement and creating a team ethos. I think that's probably one of my strengths. I love everything about engagement and finding different ways to get different people involved. And I think we mentioned earlier about social styles and being yellow. I'm quite creative and I love ideas. So I think that kind of fosters people to be open to different things. So for me, that the non-techie leading IT is an unusual concept, it is. But if you're trying to become much more value add into your business, it's much more important you understand your business and where you create value than it is to understand the technology. You can build that with your team, but the vision and the kind of business pain that you want to fix and see an opportunity. So quite often I'll look at a piece of technology and think, I really love that. Our customer portal was born out of my slight obsession for Amazon shopping. But thinking, you know, I love the way that I can go on there and see where my product is and see when it's going to be delivered to me and see what time it's going to arrive. Well, why can't we give our customers that service? You know, so I don't think you have to be the greatest techie in the world to have a look at where technology is giving great user experience, because that's what tech's about. It's about user experience.
Absolutely.
So,
I think that's invaluable advice. So if we look at the link between this and our mentoring program, which you obviously mentor people via, for, thank you very much. One of the things when people come into that program, you know, they might have this ambition to get to the level that you're at, but they don't really know what skills they need to develop to get there. And I imagine 9 times out of 10, they think it's technical skills they need. And obviously you've just debunked that myth. So if you were you know, advising somebody coming through that wanted to get into your kind of role, what kind of skills would you ask them to focus on and think that they should be trying to develop to be able to get into that position?
I think probably one of the single biggest skills is communication and style of communication and who you're communicating with and how. So it kind of goes in hand in hand with stakeholder management. I kind of always think of it as, this is my business, so I'm head of my own business, and do I want my business to be successful? What have I got to do? Who do I have to communicate with? How do I communicate that? And I think if you look at everybody as a customer, did you leave them with a great experience? As I'm talking this, I'm thinking, actually, I don't often practice what I preach, and sometimes I will lose my temper, but I get really frustrated. But I do think it's about understanding your customer, knowing what they need, articulating that. I think the other thing for me is having vision, and being able to articulate that vision in a way that people understand. So like the example I gave about Amazon and the portal, we looked at a piece of technology that was being used for farming and agriculture in New Zealand and how that can be brought into my business and look at where it can be useful. I think commercial awareness actually is probably the first thing. Where can I use something that's already existing? How can I make that work? I learned a really valuable lesson when I worked in sales, which has stuck with me through every single job. And it's a commercial lesson. It's how you manage contracts and how you get the most out of your contracts. And it's called PVEC: price, volume, efficiency, utilization, and cost. If you understand those 5 metrics, you drive things in the right direction. And that commercial lesson, didn't realize at the time, and it was a really painful lesson to learn because I never made my numbers. I'm horrified actually when I think back about how not great I was in those functions. But I do think those skills have probably been the strongest that I've built. So that commercial awareness, stakeholder management, being able to sell a vision. Ironically, none of those are technology ones, but I think they're transferable. So whether you're head of IT, whether you're head of digital, whether you want to go into a transformation role, I think, but some program management, I think they're transferable across all those skills, across all those roles. So, yeah.
Yeah, good. And I think you said yesterday when we had a quick chat that kind of the number one key to your success really is people, surrounding yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And I think, as I say, if you're going to come into the role where you put your hands up and say, you know, I'm not the person that would be doing any of the stuff that the people are doing. Yeah. You need to have those, you know, reliable lieutenants around you.
Absolutely. I also think part of it, and I think this is true of any senior leadership position, is roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. So when COVID hit last year, I think most businesses faced the same thing. We had to get everybody out of our offices very quickly. So there was a small group of us that were in the office, and it would always usually fall to our infrastructure team, who kind of pick up the brunt of all the say practical work, but you know, the hardware, the laptops and all the connectivity and that kind of thing. And I think it's really important to be seen to be supporting. So I'd come in my jeans, and I'd be the one that's pulling cables out of desks, and I couldn't do the technical stuff to build all the laptops, but I could do all the practical things like numbering them up, making sure they got their kit and the instructions within the box. I think it's roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. So we did a security awareness campaign, which we launched with a movie and a movie pack. And I helped the interns at the time that we had create the movie packs. They stick stuff in envelopes, because I think part of it for me is that people should see you. You should be visible, you should be transparent, and I think you should be able to muck in when you need to. So I might not be able to do the most technical parts of what my team are doing, but I should be able to support the team somehow, particularly when you're in.
I think that lends itself as well to what you were talking about at the start. Now, you had the benefit of having worked in most functions in the business, so you understood them. But for me, the best technology leaders I know are the ones that get out there and meet the people and actually understand what those individuals do on a day-to-day basis, what their pain points are, and what they're trying to achieve. Because technology is there to support the business. It's not there for the sake of technology.
Yeah, 100%. And it's probably one of the lessons I've learned over the last 5 years as head of IT. It's all about user experience. It's all about the experience you create with the technology that you put in place. So you can have the best technology in the world, but if your people can't use it, it's wasted. So it's something that we've probably worked on over the last 2 years, but to make we introduced the customer portal, to make that really easy to use and model it on the best in the world. We've just recently introduced a virtual hub where our people come in when they come into work, the kind of most important things they need to know. And again, it's all about user experience. How do I use it? What do I put in there that brings people to the app? So I think, yeah, it's so important, and actually quite often forgotten, because we love tech and we want tech to be like the number one thing that we do and known for, but sometimes we forget the user element of that. And quite often, one of our tech team will come and tell me, "Do you want to be a guinea pig?" And I think it's not because I've got amazing technical skills. I think it's actually because it's the polar opposite. And if I can use it, anybody can. So
yeah, ultimate UAT.
Exactly.
So just carrying on then with your career. Obviously, we're talking about you being the head of IT, but now you've progressed into this chief transformation role. How did that come about? And I guess for the benefit of more, like I said, our more experienced members who want to understand what they can do to get IT a seat at the table. What do you think you did that particularly made that successful?
So I think you talk about sponsorship. I think the sponsor, I had a really great, I used to, as head of IT, I reported to the CFO, and we had a really great working relationship built on trust. And I'd shared with him quite a few times my vision for how we could be as a company, and where, if I had more accountability, I would challenge our business process sometimes. And I think because we'd had those very honest conversations about how technology could support business change, make the business move forward much quicker, I think he was much more open to that concept. I think I can never say this word properly, but entrepreneurial. So I can see opportunity. So I kind of think I see something. I think we could do something with that. We can fix that. We could the technology that I was talking about from the farming instance in New Zealand had a really great application to make our business better. So I think if you understand your business challenges, you understand the technology concepts that you have available to you, and also you can articulate a vision in terms of art of the possible. What could we be? How could we be? The one big difference between the board member level and the head of IT level for me was the where do we want to be, the visioning piece. So, but on a much more corporate basis than functional basis. And I think that the ability to paint that picture in a way that non-technical people understand, and I suppose because I'm not a techie, that comes naturally to me because I'm not technical. So I might understand the technology when the team have told me what it is, but it's about how we use that then in business to create value. And I think if you can find a way to create value, if you can paint a picture of a world in the future and how that world looks, I think if you can be savvy in terms of what's happening in the environment that your industry is working in. So if you see a move, so for rail, for example, it's really important at the moment to be sustainable. It's one of the key pillars that will drive our business forward and help our business model grow. If you can look at how you can leverage that requirement with technology and paint a picture of what that might look like, what that could look like, that I think is the thing that probably unlocked the door for me to move up into a more senior position. I think a lot of it was to do with where my business was. So we were quite an old-fashioned business. We've got lots of legacy applications, and so it's been easier for me to look at new technology and bring in new technology in. We are part of a group, so group brought some of that technology in. COVID helped us massively get rid of, we got rid of our last fax machine last year, although I am told there's one still in the business, which I intend to hunt down on one of my visits out and about. But those kind of things, and promoting what we've done as a team and how we've done. So yeah, it's been, I think that's been a pretty key thing. I think the other thing as well, and I don't know whether this is true of all technology roles, but having resilience. Because as I said, you're mostly remembered for the good, for the negative, and not necessarily the positive. And days in tech can be really, really hard on, if you're dealing with a cyber incident, or you've got, we call them P1s, but you're having a priority one, and the technology that you've supplied, that you're accountable for, isn't working, and your business is facing significant disruption. How you handle those instances and experiences, I think, is probably something that I learned over time. But actually, they provide opportunity, and actually, how you work in a crisis can, I think, again, it's a skill that helps you push forward. But I think the strategic angle, the painting the vision, and the understanding where you add value is probably the key things that probably helped me progress to the next level.
The next question I was going to ask is, would you do anything differently if you could do it all again? But I don't want to ask that because I think you learn so much from the mistakes you make and the journey that you're on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who you are. So the question I'm going to ask is, if you were sitting down with somebody who's now in the position you were at the start of your career, what's the one key piece of advice that you'd give them?
Oh man. Oh, that's a really tricky question.
Should have rehearsed this, shouldn't we? Sorry.
I know. No. But it's a really important one, because you know what? I've been there. I've sat at the bottom of the career run, and I can't. So in my business, for example, I've worked my way up. So it is really important to understand what would be the one piece of advice. I'd probably say maybe two things: self-promotion and take the opportunity. Okay, if it's not there, find it, create it. So there must be something in your business that isn't working the way that people want it to work, or that's a frustration. Take the opportunity. And I still do that today. So I've recently become board sponsor for diversity and inclusion. I know very little about it, but actually I should be looking at those kind of things. They are important in our business moving forward. So I could either sit back and say, well, it's not my function, I don't need to know that. But I think there's opportunity for me to learn. So why wouldn't you do that? And I think it's whether you're at the bottom of your career or the start of your career or the end of your career, actually, I think there's always opportunity to learn. And that opportunity will normally create more opportunities, like a snowball. So once it starts, it doesn't stop. But you almost have to start it yourself. So that'd probably be my number one top tip.
No, I agree completely, and I've learned so much myself from these conversations, and I'm sat here now thinking, actually, what is that one thing in our business that we could do better, and then how do I go and take that message to the right people to actually drive some change? So I think, yeah.
I think the hard thing with technology is quite often businesses don't always want to change. So you've got to do, when I talked about resilience, you've got to have faith in what you're promoting, or the idea, and you can't fall at the first no. Because a lot of business have a lot of people that like to do things the way they do it, or perhaps they're more resistant to change. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. I've got everything that I need from this conversation, Marie. I think there's lots of wise words in there, and I think it is. I'm not going to say a unique story because there'll be others in your shoes, but it's a very inspiring story. That proves that regardless of the background, upbringing, education, the first job you've had, the door is never closed to getting into a tech career if that's what you want to do. And I think more and more as we move forward, tech and business are merging. Is not necessarily going to be a tech leader anymore. It's just going to be the business leader has to understand technology, how that works.
Exactly. I think it's a good point.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And
Absolute pleasure.
This is being recorded, and if anybody wants to get in touch with us after recording to ask Marie any questions, then feel free to do so by myself, and I'll pass them on. Great. Thank you very much.